When we are talking in the context of Bangladesh, obviously there has been progresses, but when we are looking at the issue of women empowerment, lot needs to be done. From that point of view, I personally, I'm an economist and I work on labor economics. And from that point of view, obviously, when we are talking about empowerment, there are a lot of things to consider. But my area is more or less related to financial empowerment. So in my discussion, I will talk about financial empowerment, which is closely related to the labor market and job opportunities of women in Bangladesh. Now, from that point of view, if I provide some statistics, one is like the gap. The other speaker has talked about, in the opening remark, has talked about the gender gap and the components of the gender gap and how Bangladesh is faring. But basically, the fact remains that in terms of other South Asian countries, the position of Bangladesh is not that bad when we are talking about the gender gap index. But the point is, often when we are looking at the statistics and the methods and the indices, we often forget the actual picture. So that's why it's important basically to understand the challenges, the core challenges, and how to deal with those challenges. In this context, one important thing is like when we are talking about, for example, in my case, if I talk about labor market, one is the labor market participation. And if we look at the labor market participation of women, then it's around 42.3% for women, and for men it's around 79% or 80%. So obviously there's a huge gap. Well, it's not only gap in terms of the statistics, but if you want to look at the quality of the labor force participation, though I work with statistics, I always think that it's important to look at the quality rather than quantity. So from that point of view, there is one thing that the difference in terms of the rural and urban area, that is very interesting. And over time, what has happened, if we look at from 2017 to 2022, I'm talking about these two time periods because labor force survey has been done. We have seen that though there has been a significant improvement in terms of the participation of women in rural areas, when you are looking at the urban areas, the participation rate has fallen. So the reasoning could be COVID. The reasoning from my point of view, there could be also related to the ready-made garment sector, because some of you might know that when we are talking about the ready-made garment sector, there are the skill advancement, automation, all of these things has affected the labor force participation of women in the ready-made garment sector. So previously we used to say that is 80%, 85% of women in the ready-made garment sector. Now we cannot say that. According to some of the statistics that we have conducted a few years before, we have found it's like around 65% or 60% or more. So that is something that might have affected. And also when we are looking at the quality of employment, significant percentage, basically the majority of the women, more than 70%, they are actually working in the agriculture sector.
টানা সপ্তমবারের মতো বেস্ট টিস্যু পেপার ব্র্যান্ড হিসেবে স্বীকৃতি পেয়েছে বসুন্ধরা টিস্যু।
Well, working in the agriculture sector, what's the problem there? The problem is agriculture sector is very much signifies informality, and it is often very low pay. People who are working in agriculture sector are very vulnerable to different natural calamities as well. So if that is the case, we can say that we are talking about the structural transformation in Bangladesh. So we are going from an agro-based country to urban and more industrialized manufacturing-based sector. So from that point of view, women are not actually being able to reap the benefit of this structural transformation. So that is another qualitative question that we need to keep in mind. definitely the informality, and we all know that when we were discussing and we were facing the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that how crucial informality is and how serious informality is in Bangladesh. And especially when we are looking at the statistics of women employment, it's basically very few percentage of women are working in the formal sector. Most of the women are working in the informal sector. So that means they are very much vulnerable when there is any sort of global or local unrest or problem or downturn in the economy. And there is another thing that is also very interesting. So this is the quantity aspect, but when we are looking at the more of the quality aspect, that is the type of work where women are doing. And the interesting thing is, like, if you look at the statistics, again, even if we look at the statistics, if we don't go inside of the qualitative thing, then we find that around 7 or 8% women, they are actually working in the managerial as a manager in the and working to performing managerial work. So that means the other are actually the men. So that means the gender parity there, when we are talking about decision making or managerial role or roles which are related with empowerment, which are related with remuneration, that is the divide, and the gender divide and gender gap is very high there. So that is another very crucial thing. The quality aspect is also a long way we need to go. And another final word in terms of the challenges that I would like to employment I would like to mention is when we are talking about the youth. There is one word which is very common, which is youth need, which is youth who are not in employment, not in education, and not in training. And if you look at the picture of Bangladesh, we are a country where there's a demographic potential, and we have seen also in the July uprising the contribution of youth. But when we are looking at the youth labor force, have we been able to reap the benefit of our demographic profile? Basically, if we have we have actually a very strong percentage of youth who are not in employment, not in education, and not in training. That also reflects that we haven't been able to utilize the potential that the youth women in Bangladesh have. So if this is the labor market, formal labor market, then if you look at the informal structure, and Ms. Tahira was also on other speakers were also mentioning about the unpaid labor, and a significant percentage of time that women are spending at home, that is definitely not within the purview of the discussion of the labor market, but the fact is that is not recognized, and these are not these work and these time that women are spending are not recognized as work. And this is also another very crucial thing that we need to consider. This is the contribution of women is an expenditure saving activity of a family, but that part is not